Welcome to Sikh Cast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Welcome to the Sikh Cast. This episode is from a live recording from August 1st of this year. The Sikh Research Institute gathered a host of incredible voices from across the globe to uncover the historical facets of Sikh history in Pakistan. Before we get into the recording, I'll introduce you to our guests. First up, we have filmmaker and author Amardeep Singh from Singapore. After leaving 25 years in the corporate world behind, he began a journey of uncovering the history of Sikhs in Pakistan, beginning with the partition of India in 1947. Through years of research, he has produced 2 books and 2 documentary films, and is currently creating a multi-episode series called Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels looking into the travels of Guru Nanak across 9 countries. Next, we have Dr. Nadhra Khan from Lahore, Pakistan. She is an associate professor of art history at the Lahore University of Management Sciences and specializes in art and architecture in Punjab from 16th to 20th century. In her tenure, she was the first to create a comprehensive study of the Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Samadhi in Lahore. This 19th century monument was often confused with a mix of post-British annexation architecture, and until her studies debuted in 2018 at the University of Bonn Studies in Asian Art and Cultural Series. Dr. Dalvir Singh Pannu from California joins us. He's an award-winning dentist and founder of Pannu Dental Group. He and a team traveled to Pakistan to create the book Sikh Heritage, Beyond the Borders. They traveled to 84 different sites, dedicating a chapter to each one, and with a multitude of photos, cross-referenced sources, and transcriptions, they provided an insight into the physical and monumental history of Sikhs in Punjab. And lastly, moderating the dialogue, we have Dr. Pritpal Singh from Dallas, Texas. A lover of Sikh history and education, he is a serving member with the Board of Directors of Sikh Research Institute, as well as a physician executive for Cigna, providing mentorship to health management teams by providing clinical insight, educational support, and healthcare solutions and strategies. The webinar is facilitated by our webinar coordinator, Manvinder Kaur. Dr. Pritpal Singh will start us off.
Hanji, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Good morning, and depending on where you are in the world, good evening, good afternoon. Today, we're very delighted, and it's actually a treat for all of us to have such a wonderful panel of individuals who have really worked so hard, and they actually have followed their passions in life, despite being introduced on different paths. And it's a real treat, personal treat for me, because I am a student of history. And first time I went to Pakistan was during my childhood, and I've never forgotten that. So first question for the panel. All of you you're really experts in your field. And some of you are actually in other professions or were in other professions, but chose to make this a priority in life. So I'll start with Amardeep Singh, that what motivated you to explore and leave behind your job in the corporate world and make this really the focus in your life?
Thanks, Dr. Pritpal, for giving this opportunity, and to the SikhRI team. Certain things cannot be explained in life, and it's best one does not attempt to explain. Actually, it's a misnomer when people say you left your job. I think I'm working even harder than what I was working in the corporate life. So one would say is that it's just a change of track. I mean, you're still very actively engaged. You're still contributing in the society. I think the way I look at my life is there was a 25 years corporate rat race one was running. There was a time for that. There was a space for that. There was a passionate pursuit one was delving into for good 30 odd years. And that there was a time in life that it manifested, it sprouted. I mean, it's like a blooming of a flower. And one can only thank the divine that you were given an opportunity. But the way I define the pursuits today in my life is that 25 years I was running a life for dollars and cents and basis points. Now I have given up my wants. I live on need, but I'm living a life which is a cherishable life, which I'll reflect back in my old days age, and I'll say, thank God you gave me this opportunity.
So a follow-up question to you, Amardeep, is what brought that change? What led you to make that shift in your life?
Well, as I said, often one would I would give this tip to the youth, and rather than saying that what brought my change is that whatever you're doing in the moment, do it to the best of your ability. I often say, people give advice, follow your passions. I always say, don't follow your passions. Create your passions. What it means is, in the moment, whatever you're doing, do it such a perfection and with so much of passion inside it that actually you're creating it. You become the passion. And then what happens is the change every time is lying right behind you. All you have to do is just turn behind, pick it up, and it transforms. All I can say is that in my life, when I look back, never have I pursued something more than 4 to 5 years. Even when I'm looking at this life, I left corporate in 2014. I was an author. I'm no more an author. I'm now a filmmaker, right? So I don't see myself as an author. But I was a photographer. I'm no more a photographer. I was into musicology. I'm no more a musicologist, right? So I think the parallel track, all I will say is, I'll not try and say what made me transform, but I'll try and give an advice to the people you're hearing. Create your passions, because your answer is right behind you, and the divine will tell you when you have to stop a track and pick up the next one.
Thank you, Amardeep Singh ji. That finding the passion is one thing that I'm not sure if most people ever get an opportunity to even think about, and even less people get actually an opportunity to pursue once they discover their passion. So, Dr. Dalvir Singh Pannu ji, you are an established dentist in California. What brought this change in your life that motivated you to explore and perhaps change the direction your life was going at that point?
Thank you so much, Dr. Pritpal Singh ji. First of all, I really want to appreciate this wonderful effort by SikhRI, putting us all together. Amardeep Singh Paji, whom I have been watching for so many years, working really hard, doing the field work. Dr. Nadhra Khan, who actually ignited this fire in me many years ago when she had made a presentation in Lubitas. I was one of the spectators watching her presentation. So just to answer your question briefly, I would say that while working as a dentist, I always had a kind of interest in history, not necessarily Sikh history, but I'm very fond of traveling worldwide, understanding how the religions convert and they play their conversion game. That is actually my main niche, is to spend a lot of time in Spain, in Portugal, just to watch those buildings and see how the religion of the buildings got converted. Then I started going back to India to visit Central India, Eastern India, Southern India, just to observe the patterns. Like, it was not something specific to Sikh history as such. So while working as a dentist, I got a lot of staff members because of my personal interest or socializing. You can say I got a lot of staff members and patients from Iran, Iraq, Egypt, Turkey, Pakistan, in Bangladesh. So while talking to them, what I felt was that there is a unique opportunity here that we can do something special for the heritage which is outside India, to document it with the help of those friends. And though I could not dare to leave my dental practice because that's my bread and butter, so I thought of doing simultaneously. I'm wearing different hats at different times, but with God's grace, things are working fine. And so I kind of challenged myself that along with the career, how can I do something with the help of this good network that we get chance abroad? Either we are living in Canada or Singapore or USA, we have something different than India because we meet people from different nationalities, which was not possible if I was still doing my dental practice in Fagwada. मेरी practice Fagwada sigi before I came to. उत्थे मैं जिन्ना मर्जी interest कर लेंदा पाकिस्तान दे नाल, though it was just closest point India च रहंदे होए, I would not have been able to do this. This only happened because इत्थे माहौल change है, you have different people around you. So that brought the change in me ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਰੱਬ ਕੋਲ ਜਾਣਾ, ਅੱਲਾ ਕੋਲ ਜਾਣਾ, ਚੰਗੇ ਮੋਢੇ ਛਿੱਲ ਹੋਏ ਹੋਣ, ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੇ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੰਮ ਭੇਜਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਰੱਬ ਕਵੇ ਵੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕੰਮ ਕੁਝ ਭੇਜਿਆ ਸੀ ਨਾ, ਕੁਝ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਇਆ, you have done something, ਮੁੱਕੇ ਮੱਕੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਇਆ ਕੁਝ. So that's all brought the change in me, Dr. Saab. Thank you.
No, I hear you ਕਿ ਕੱਲੇ ਡਾਲਰ ਜਾਂ ਪਾਉਂਡ ਕਮਾਏ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੀ ਖੱਟਿਆ.
ਜੀ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ.
Totally relate to you. ਛੋਟੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਪੈਸ਼ਨ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਸੀਗਾ, ਹਿਸਟਰੀ.
ਜੀ.
And but I never to the point where I used to read my older sister's books as a kid, as an elementary school student, and she was 6 years older than me. But I never quite had the courage or never got the appropriate guidance to pursue my passion. So it's great to see you doing that alongside dentistry. Next, Dr. Khan, welcome, and want to hear your thoughts that you were sharing before this webinar started, that you were not exactly a fan of history growing up. So how did this come about where you not only became a fan, but now you teach, you're a professor of art history and with a focus on architecture in Lahore?
Thank you very much, Dr. Pritpal. And thank you, SikhRI team, for giving me this opportunity to share the stage. As I said earlier, I'm really, humbled and honored to be here with Dr. Dalvir Singh Pannu and Amardeep Singh, because, they're doing great work, and, this conversation with them is going to teach me a lot of things about what I do in my own very small capacity. Yes, growing up, I was not a fan of history. And that is something that has actually, sort of informed me into my own teaching, how to communicate these facts and figures to students and make them interesting for them to actually hang on to them for more. If you are communicating these as a very dry subject of asking them to memorize everything without giving them any context, then it becomes very hard for people to follow, the timeline or the characters. And more than often, everything gets jumbled up, because this is what I used to do. I found it very hard to memorize the date of birth and the date of death, and I would, just mix them up, and so on. And then finally, I got into, I was always interested in fine arts. Fine arts, of course, meant that I had to study history of art as well. And the visuals and how to analyze images and the material culture is something that, kind of took me in. And that is where my conversion took place. It happened at a time when, I realized that in order to understand and in order to really find out who had created this visual and material culture, and how these material cultures could actually connect me to people who are not there anymore, is where my passion for history started. And then, if you ask me, how did I get into Sikh history or the Sikh art and architecture, that's again a point where, I was initiated without knowing I was getting into it. I went to the Samadhi one day while I was a PhD student. I stood in the building, looked around. The kind of information that had been kind of poured into my head unknowingly, and, these are notions that are handed down to us. They kind of give you an understanding about a different culture or a people or a community from a totally different perspective. And when I stood there, I thought to myself, what I've read in history books is that Maharaja Ranjit Singh is accused of pillaging Mughal monuments. So probably this is a result of all of that. And I'm going to find out, why did he do that, and which Mughal monuments were pillaged. It was only later that when I started, studying the other perspective, that I realized that this was a very important period in our architectural and artistic history that had been totally ignored. And now I'm a complete advocate of asking people, my students and anyone that I get a chance of talking to pay attention to something which was actually, formulated in a certain manner, in a certain dismissive manner, and to revisit it. And so my study of history has actually changed my own understanding about myself and people around me. And now I have the courage to ask questions when I read something which is like a sweeping statement. And this is what I encourage my students to do.
And we are so very thankful that you are there in West Punjab, asking those questions and challenging the status quo. So let's move on to, thanks for sharing all of you your personal touch. Audience always wants to know, the personal touch, what motivated you to shift. So now let's get into it, the crux of the matter, and we'll go backward this time. So Dr. Nadhra Khan, what is heritage to you? This is for everybody. What is heritage to you as an individual and as a professor, and why is it important? Why to preserve it?
So, if we start with the term heritage, what exactly does it mean? Heritage is something that connects us to the past. Heritage, contemporary artwork is not referred to as heritage. So there is this very strong element of pastness. But this pastness is connected to the present because we ourselves are in the present. So we are going back into the past, trying to understand, who made it, why was it made? And these questions lead us to connecting with these people temporally and spatially, and helps us understand their lives. Why was a building created? What these spaces used for? How were they celebrating their lives? How were they performing their rituals? So heritage, whether it's a building or it's a song or a story or an artifact, the material, the way that it is used, the way that, it has been crafted, it tells you about the humans at the other end. And so this becomes a bridge on which you can tread and go back and connect with them. So heritage is extremely important for me. Heritage is something that has allowed me to connect back to the Punjabi language. I grew up in a Punjabi family. My parents used to speak Punjabi. All my elder relatives used to converse with each other in Punjabi. We were discouraged to speak Punjabi. I started speaking Punjabi and fluent Punjabi when I started going to Amritsar for my research. And now I have, really dear Punjabi friends, and I feel happy that I now have this control and I have been able to reclaim a language that was very much my own. So this is again a part of heritage. This is how heritage actually informs you about your own present life. By connecting with the past, by connecting with people who lived in the past, what they did, what they celebrated, and along this way, you come across a lot of narrative, a variety of narratives, a lot of discourse about how something is presented, how something is portrayed, sometimes positive, in a positive light, sometimes in a negative light. And while you're doing that, you must ask questions. Why so? Why is someone saying so? Why isn't this being said in a totally different way? And while you're asking these questions, finding some of the answers, not always every question is answerable, but along the way, you do come across elements and, sort of pointers that help you realize who you are in your own present position. So, that is why I really encourage everyone to, whether it's a tiny little bit of a touch of heritage in their lives, whatever time they may have, every one of us must try to connect with our heritage.
Yeah, thanks for answering the question both from professional sense and also personal. You have to see personal touch Geeta about moving to Amritsar and studying. Perhaps we can get more into our Q&A session. It's asking the right and tough questions. Dr. Dalvir Singh Pannu ji, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤਜਰਬੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, in your experience, in your travels, in your writings, why do you think it's important? What is heritage and why is it important to preserve it?
Dr. Khan ne dasya, heritage is something that helps us to connect with the past. And I would say, like, to me, it is even like, if you're talking to your grandparents, to the seniors, elders, if you're documenting their narratives, if you are putting them into some documentation, or you're just trying to preserve any oral tradition that is going on and you're documenting it somewhere for posterity. ताकि ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹੈਗੇ, so the past can connect to the future. You want to be a link in between, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ, like, all four of us are doing somewhere, ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਆਪਾਂ daily research ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, right, in other part. And sometimes we find out in a particular period, oh my gosh, there is no documentation available from these 20 years. What were the people doing? So we don't want the people to say 200 years from now, what were the people doing in 2020? Oh, ki kar rahe sake? So that's why I feel heritage is a connection between different generations, which needs continuity. And ਜਦੋਂ continuity ਟੁੱਟਦੀ ਹੈ, it can be because ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਲਹਿਰ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, some other movement is going on which is very strong, going in that particular 20 years, 30 years, when all the people are very much involved in that literary work. ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕਵਿਤਾਵਾਂ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ, people are passionate about that, it's some strong movement going on. Or sometimes it's just lack of awareness, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, but last 5-10 years it has really, I would say, jump started. Amardeep Paji's book, when it came, before that there was a big gap. Iqbal Kaisar ਦੀ book ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ, since he started, and then a lot of people, other and social media people in Pakistan started working, you say that again reignited. So it just, there are phases in history in which people start documenting more, and then again it dies. So to me, heritage is to remember that these are the only ways that we can communicate with the past. And it's a wonderful feeling, how amazing it is. Without phone, without wireless, without anything, you can talk to 200 years ago, 2000 years ago with the heritage. You just have to have that feeling, either with a building or with a scripture or with the holy book or with any tradition that is passing on. You can talk to what was in the mind of the people, like hundreds, thousands years ago. Or sometimes even if you go to Egypt, you watch the pyramid, you can just talk to them. You can see what was going on. And same thing with the grandparents. ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਾਬਿਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਫੋਟੋਆਂ, ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸੁਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ. ਹੁਣ ਮੇਰੇ grandmother, they were like 9 brothers and sisters. She passed away at age 99. I would just ask her all her 9 brother sisters' names. It's not easy to tell 9 brother sisters' name, So for me, it was heritage to just remind her and ask her about her brother sisters' names. Just that would bring tears in her eyes. So to me, that is also heritage. Just asking about her siblings when she's in her late 90s, so that's how I would say I would define the heritage. Thank you, Rasa.
And this, at least on a personal level, on an individual level, each one of us, because ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਧੀ population ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ came from West Punjab. So at an individual level, we can ask our elders who are still alive, and those of us who can take the initiative and visit Pakistan, we have a unique experience. I know jad on one of my travels, ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਤੇ ਨਾਨਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਸਾਡਾ ਨਾ ਘਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਆਏ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਚੱਕ ਨੰਬਰ ਮੈਂ ਭੁੱਲ ਗਿਆ, ਪਰ ਲੈਲਪੁਰ ਦੇ ਲਾਗੇ ਸੀਗਾ. When we went there, the way, when I told them who I was, ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੀ, ਸਾਡਾ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟਾ ਇੱਕ ਨਿਆਣਾ ਵੀ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ, the way I was treated, ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਉਸ ਪਿੰਡ ਦਾ ਹੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਜਵਾਈ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, and they treated ਸਾਡਾ ਨਿਆਣਾ 1 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ, him as their own. And as we were leaving, I remember because it was sun was setting and it was late, ਤੇ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਹਿਰੋਂ ਪਿੰਡ ਜਾਣਾ ਨਾ ਬੜਾ ਔਖਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, roads ਕੱਚੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ. And remember, an elderly man in the village said, ਸਰਦਾਰ ਜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਣਾ, so ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਰਮ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ I don't, as a Sikh, I don't remember the gurdwara, and here is this older Muslim guy reminding me of my heritage. But what I didn't realize at that time, which I do now, कि ਉਹਦੀ भी heritage ਹੈਗੀ, and he's playing his role. So thank you for sharing that. Amardeep Singh ji, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਕੀ ਨੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, heritage and the importance to preserve it?
Right. So, jada ek standard definition which goes around the world about the heritage. When you say heritage, mind kind of tends to default to a physical, tangible body. That's where it tends to default, right? But jadon tusi, we are all in this space, all of us, and we realize over a period of time that's not the true sense of definition of heritage, because heritage actually encompasses both tangible and intangible. It encompasses value systems, traditions, cultures, properties te hundiya hi ne, wo te mind default karda hai, right? Artifacts, and the expansion just goes on and on. Before I get down to really sharing my experiences, I just want to take from what Nadhra ji said. My life since 2014, when I left the corporate job in American Express and I ventured onto this path, it's a life of bliss, I tell you. I thank the divine you've given me this opportunity. But in 2017, it dawned on me, jida Nadhra ji ne kiya ki Punjabi de bare ch, mainu dawn hoya ki mere father, he was from Kashmir, Muzaffarabad, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਪਨ ਤੋਂ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ. I used to read ਗੁਰਮੁਖੀ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ ਤੇ ਮਿਲਾਪ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ, ਐਂਡ ਸਮਟਾਈਮਸ ਮਿਲਾਪ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ used to be in Urdu, and ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਨ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਪੁੱਤਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ, ਪੇਪਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਇਆ ਅੱਜ. ਤੇ I used to go in a rickshaw to get a ਮਿਲਾਪ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ for him, right? ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਯਾਰ ਮੇਰੀ ਹੈਰੀਟੇਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਗੁਰਮੁਖੀ ਤੇ ਸਿਖਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ, ਹਿੰਦੀ ਸਿਖਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ, ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਬੈਲਟ ਤਾਂ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ, right? ਲੇਕਿਨ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਵੀ ਸਿਖਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ, but no one taught me Urdu, what my father used to read, right? I claimed it with a vigor and passion. In 3 months, I learned Urdu in 2017. To me, that's reclaiming your heritage. It's an intangible aspect of heritage, right? Now, where I'm actually heading is from our Sikh legacy perspective, documentation of heritage is the key to change. और मैं इधर एक example देना अक्सर मैं कहना, it's not too far away. तुसी Angkor Wat ਨੂੰ देखो कैम्बोडिया ਦੇ अंदर. Angkor Wat till 1992 was an abandoned space, abandoned. ज़्यादा दूर नहीं है. 1992 is not very far away. Today, it's a sought out site where people want to go and visit it. It's a UNESCO site. Why did it become and how did it become is the question we need to ask. Well, someone documented the heritage. So first you have to have a sense of realization what the heritage is. You have to move towards documenting it, create an awareness, and maybe it's not in your lifetime that you will see the blooming of the results of this effort that you do. But when it happens, mankind will benefit out of it. And therefore, I just want to end this piece from the Sikh heritage perspective in Pakistan. When I embarked on this, I mean, for me, it was a 30 years of my self-pursuit, going into various aspects. I think I was ready, and when I embarked inside it, what I found was that the documentations that had happened till then, when I did my first journeys in 2014 for explorations, they were essentially Punjab-centric, and they were primarily Gurdwara-centric. Now, Nadhra ji has done a great work in terms of Samad of Ranjit Singh. Now, there are some PhD works happening on some monuments, so we can't say they're not happening. But by and large, the most well-known books were all Gurdwara-centric. So then you sit back and you say, is this my legacy? Were my forefathers so incompetent that all that they made was Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib, where the entire generation has been flocking only for these 3 or 4 sites? Dera Sahib Gurdwara chale jande ne, but no one actually steps into the Lahore fort. How do you bring about that change? And then you start pushing the envelope, and then you realize the power of the heritage kind of starts choosing you to go into places so far as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh, Balochistan, Baltistan, where the remnants of Sikh legacy are still there. But you got to go beyond Gurdwaras. And that's the aspect when you start doing. And to end it, I'll say cultural aspect. We have a huge, today to understand who a Sikh is, we define who a Sikh is. But the fact is, if you have to understand who a Sikh is, I say that you have to leave India and you have to go and immerse yourself in the communities that are residing across the Indus region who are still believing in the Granth Sahib to really understand what was the Sikh value system. And as Nadhra ji said, that Dr. Pannu said, the questioning that happens, you have to pose the question to yourself, jiri meri conditioning hoi sigi, jo inne saal to mainu sikhaya gaya siga, ki us cheez nu main manna ki jo main dekh raha hu manna. And that's where the visual ethnographic documentation is the best way of doing it, because when you show a Nanak Panthi in Balochistan sitting down with just one turban Sikh and 300 of them are sitting down and doing Lehra Sahib and reading the scripture, no one can question who a Sikh is. So I just want to stop there for now.
No, there's no doubt. Thanks for sharing those personal experiences. We live in this the era of social media, so now it's very readily available. News travels fast. Photos, pics, you can make friends from both sides of the border and abroad, and because when you're driven by a passion, right? So absolutely agree that those you can connect from social media angle. Those who are able to travel, they can visually see it. And ਜਿਹੜੀ brainwashing since birth, we can do a reality check on that. So next question, in interest of time, I'll move forward, is we'll start with Dr. Pannu. What do we lose when we destroy or change these structures which depict heritage?
To me, what we are losing, I think we are losing everything, as I said earlier. So this question just falls into the kind of similar pattern, is that we lose that important, like how the civilization grows is by learning from the past and applying it to the future. If we don't preserve the heritage, if we don't preserve what the people were talking about earlier, or their lifestyle was, or their culture was, if we are not preserving that, we are just relying on much further away documentation. We are not documenting the slow transition. We are losing how it happened. Just like how Islam came. A lot of people just started from the time of Aurangzeb. When I started researching, I found it very close to the time of Sheikh Friji. A lot of things happened there. The Sufiana, the softer type of Islam, the more you study in Sindh also, it started after Muhammad bin Qasim, he left. But a lot of the Sufiana people, the preachers, they stayed there, and slowly it helped. At the Khanka at Pakpatan, a lot of people converted in the next few centuries, even during the Tughlaq period. And that was the softer side of Islam. So if we are not studying heritage from that point of view, we are just looking into few gurdwaras in Pakistan, it's not going to help. It helps. Heritage studies help us to understand the slow transition. Even I was very surprised, when I was studying about this, how the earlier Jats, Hindus, and, all those converted into Islam, even, Nizamuddin Aulia, Sheikh Friji, for few centuries, it was not that orthodox. They said, okay, you can practice, few things here and there. You can keep your murti puja da jyada chakkar hunda. Matlab Hindus da main hunda ki murti rakhni hai, but puja da chakkar hunda. That's the main defining. So that continued along with the people who were already, they had converted to Islam. And then when Naqshbandis came, they were just on the fringe, then they completely converted. So it is a very slow process that takes few centuries in which people go through that transition. Same thing happened in Sikhism with the Nanak Panthis. So heritage studies help us to understand these slow transitions that have taken place over the period of centuries. And interestingly, to understand this Sikh, Muslim, and Hindu, which is very important, aspect of modern politics in the Indian subcontinent, you have to visit Pakistan. You have to learn the history of Pakistan region, because that's where we can still find the remnants. If you visit Sindh Balochistan area, you can find Sikh Muslim interface. If you go to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, you can see Muslim Afghan interface. So there are a lot of those intercultural, interreligious transitions still available to study, as it might have happened many centuries ago. You just need to live there, spend few weeks, few months with them, enjoy their lifestyle without poking your new modern philosophy about religion. That's how I think you can see how the earlier transitions might have happened, even Guru Sahib's period.
So you're saying it requires time, it requires effort, and requires listening, not interjecting your absolutely. Thank you for your response. Amardeep Singh, same questions. What do we lose when we change these structures about heritage?
So Pritpal ji, is that it's a very powerful question, and it can take hours to even address it, right? But let me put it in a few minutes here. मैं often अपने presentation में कहना, because ये पाकिस्तान जाके मैंने एक गल समझ आई, right? उस तो पहला तो ऐसी condition सीगे, बचपन तो जो सानू दिखाया जाता सीगा, ये गुरुद्वारा है, marble structure, gold लाया हुआ है, दे ही जाओ बस, बाबे आके सब कुछ तोड़ी जा रहे हैं, बनाई जा रहे हैं. And it struck me when I was there. I said, we lost it there. When I say there, that land is my land, my ancestral land. I don't mean to say there and here, but I have to still explain it in simple English. So I mean, as a passport holder, I'm not from that land now, but I often say we lost it there. The lands, our heritage, are tangible, intangible, but we destroyed it here. Destroyed it here means Punjab and East Punjab. Every bit of heritage is destroyed. Physical landscape, right? Physical scape ਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ destroy ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ narrative destroy ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ. That narrative does not pass down. It conditions you to believe in a new thing which the society wants to make you believe. And I often say, what is it that my current generation is trying to tell me out of gold and marble laden gurdwaras? I often say, whiteness of the marble is trying to tell my current generation, be blank in your thinking. White, don't think any color. No art, nothing, white. The gold tells you, be as materialistic as you can. That's what we are telling our next generation. And that's a big impact that you're leaving subtly, subconsciously for the next Paniri, which has to take forward this heritage. And it's a pretty sad state of affairs. We get onto the cultural aspect, because heritage is not tangible monuments. When you destroy monuments, you destroy narratives. Let me just go back here. In Pakistan, inside a Gurdwara or inside many of the Udasi shrines, the older shrines, even Gurdwaras, I've seen the remnants of art. And one of the art I often talk about is Shravan Kumar holding his parents and walking. I'd say, Shravan Kumar is nothing about Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, Jain. It's about a value system that give a respect to your parents when they grow old, right? That's what Shravan Kumar stands for from the Indic faith point of view. And yet, he cannot find space in our Gurdwaras today because he's not wearing a turban. He's not a Sikh. So we've conditioned it. And just moving to the cultural, to the intangible aspect, which is equally important here. You see, when we start destroying our heritage, culturally, subtly, the intangibles, we start really destroying it, cutting our roots from it. Let's step back for a moment. Dalvir Pannuji talked about the slow conditioning of how the society changes. Let's see it from a Sikh's perspective. The best friend of Guru Nanak was Bhai Mardana. They were buddies who traveled far and wide, if I was to use a modern terminology, right? Baba Farid di Bani nu ikattha kita. And yet, when you move forward in time, the partition to kuch saal pehla, narrative tusi padho, then what happened? Conditioning. Lahore station, they used to sell 2 pots in water and 2 pots, Hindu pani to Muslim pani. What happened? Because you didn't preserve your narratives of oneness, you destroyed your narratives of culture oneness, the intangible narrative. And that's what probably is the root cause of partition, because you could not drink water together. And that's the reason why we are where we are. So I just want to actually stop here that again, for me, the biggest learning is not the monuments. For me, the biggest learning is the understanding of the remnants of the culture. Jira sanu ek struggle mene mind ch rendi si ki who is a Sikh? Sehj Tari, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਪਤਿਤ ਹੈ, derogatory word, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਹ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਹੈ, right? And then look at the value system of the people. They're not demonstrating the value system of what we stand for. And you were totally confused. And then when I go into these belts across Pakistan, where so many lakhs of believers of Nanak are still there, Pakistan does not understand who these people are. Pakistan's official count of Sikhs is about 15,000. I said there are lakhs and lakhs of believers of Nanak sitting there. When will you realize who they are? Because our culture, our civilization was civilizations were always along river beds. There was a Gangetic civilization, there was an Amazonian civilization, there was an Indus civilization. Our forefathers, whether it be the 5 rivers of Punjab or be Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Sindh or Balochistan, Nanak and his philosophy was in the Indus region. That's the cultural heritage aspect that we've totally lost, because we've lost the lands, and losing the lands has an impact on the tangible aspects of heritage.
That's beautifully put, Virji. That by basically changing or destroying these maybe structures, but we have actually destroyed our relationships with not only the land but the people and therefore we don't value it. And those of who do value it, we miss it. We cringe for it. We cry out for it. I know 2 saal pehla I went to Punjab, East Punjab, and my 8-year-old son, when I took him to Fatehgarh Sahib, he goes, मैं ਉਹ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮਾਤਾ ਗੁਜਰੀ ਸੀਗੇ ਮੈਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਠੰਡੇ ਬੁਰਜ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣਾ. And I told him, I knew the answer. I told him, go to ask the Sevadar. And when he asked the Sevadar said, you can't go there, it's only for show. So his response was, well, why, what the hell is this? Why is it so, what's the purpose here to show? If I can't go, I want to feel where the Sahibzades were. So in his mind, it was useless, and he's 8 years old. So we totally get your point. In the interest of time, I want to tell the audience, drop your questions in Q&A. We'll get to it momentarily. Dr. Khan, because your specialty is architecture and art history, I do want to ask you, what can be deduced from architecture about heritage? Can you provide some examples, some Sikh examples from your studies or from your experiences?
Thank you. Before I answer this, let me just go back to what Dr. Pannu and Amardeep have been building on.
Yeah, please.
I wish I had my audience right in front of me, like I have my students in my class, and I would, ask them, what do you think is the difference between an archive and a building? When we visit an archive, we expect everything to be placed in shelves. Everything is retrievable. These are documents that are going to enlighten us, give us the knowledge about things that have happened before us. And when we walk into a building, we do not use the building, or we do not allow the building to narrate its story to us, or we're not equipped with the language with which we can hold a conversation with the building. A building itself, or any artifact, or any intangible element, it may be a song, it may be a doda, these are all archives. And these are all extremely important links to our history. They inform us as to who we are today, because we're not suspended in midair. We're connected to earlier times, and again, as Dr. Pannu said, we in the present are again a very important link to the future. So when we destroy our buildings, we need to understand why are we doing it. And again, as these two learned speakers have already elaborated upon, it is the conditioning that expects us to look at architecture in a certain way. Now, where is this coming from? As far as I've studied and whatever I've found so far is that, when we go back to the time where Sikh architecture started emerging, what was the legacy before then? It was the Mughal legacy. On the one hand, it was the Mughal legacy. There was a certain visual culture. There was a certain visual vocabulary that people could understand. So architecture would be formulated according to that vocabulary, because architecture is also something which is a mode of communication. It is a text written in brick and mortar. So who told us to build our buildings in a certain way, using a certain shape, architectural elements? It has to have a dome, a haveli has to look like this, a gurdwara needs to look like this, a mosque needs to have a mimbar, a minaret, this and that, and everything else. We can put that to a side and then start going back to the second part of your question. Why are we attuned to looking at our building only when it has white marble and it is gilded? Where is that coming from? that is also, again, conditioning that took place during the colonial period, where these colonial masters became his masters. They became the masterful voice. They became the state narrative. The state narrative told us that whatever was being done during Shah Jahan's period or the Mughal period, and then Shah Jahani period is kind of the epitome of Mughal architectural vocabulary. White marble was the fittest material to be used for imperial architecture. Wherever it was possible, it had to be gilded. What the British authors told us, and that is something that is unfortunately informing us to this day, is that Sikh architecture was a pale imitation of Mughal architecture. In order to dismiss that, somewhere something is motivating us into creating Sikh architecture at par with Mughal architecture. I think this is time where we need to challenge this narrative. We need to understand that whatever material was used by people in any given time and locality was good enough for them. Whether it was just plaster, whether it was paint, we need to leave it the way it is, because this is a book that cannot be messed around with. This is a book that needs to be read in its own original manuscript. When we erase earlier, traces of whatever was imprinted on it by actual people, we are actually breaking up the link. It is not going to give us an entire story, because this is going to be a crooked story. We are actually making these interventions and changing the entire narrative. So these are some questions that we need to understand, that we need to address. We need to go back to the colonial writing. We need to see and inform ourselves and, be comfortable in taking history and heritage as it was created, and not try and, tweak it to an extent where it stops narrating its actual original story. I hope I've answered your question, but if not, please remind me of what I've missed.
No, you did. You did. Thank you for your responses for both of the questions, the one I asked and the one I did not ask. I want to ask one last question to all three of you, and then we'll move into the Q&A session. Researching through this, reading, visiting places, and all you for also Dr. Khan coming to the East Punjab side as well. When we think about the future, what are the tangible ways of re-imaging or re-owning this shared heritage? Because we have established in our dialogue, we can't just silo it in a Sikh box or a Punjabi box or fill in the blank box. What is the best way going forward? What needs to happen to not just preserve it, but re-own it, reclaim it? I want to start with you, Dr. Khan, and then we'll go backwards.
Thank you. So, we need to re-own it, and this re-owning would take place automatically when we open our minds and our hearts into understanding why was it made, who made it, what was the material that was used, why this, why not that. And then again, also ask questions that are not documented. Why are certain buildings or certain artifacts have been preserved, and why are the others not preserved? Who decides into preserving something and destroying something else? And challenge that. Every expression and every creativity that takes place in a certain time and a certain space is important, because this is an expression of an individual. All individuals are important, no matter what their religious affiliations may be, or what their zaat would be, and what their everything else would be. Human beings are important, and we need to start celebrating that. When we start doing that, a lot of walls would be dismantled, a lot of bridges would be made. You can then reach out to people, you can then hear their voices. And then that also helps us in our present day, where we are again, doing something that we've been again conditioned into building silos, into looking at things from, certain standpoints, and not opening our hearts and our ears into listening to what the others may be saying. Everyone is important, whether it's the majority, whether it's the the narrative of people who are in power or the subaltern voices. We need to pay attention to everything. When we start doing that, and this humane side of ours comes to the fore, then taking up heritage as this is Sikh heritage or this is Muslim heritage, or we need to actually get rid of these definers in any case. Heritage is heritage. At one point in time, it may have been created, and again, when we talk about heritage, conservation also kicks in at the same point. How do we conserve it? Do we erase all subsequent traces of people who left their stamps on it? No, everyone is important. Amardeep talked about the Lahore Fort. The Lahore Fort is again, a landscape that has so many people, so many different types of backgrounds, so many religions, so many political narratives embedded in these walls. What do we do? Do we knock down everything that is Sikh and that is British and just take it back to the Mughal period because we as Muslims only own the Mughals? No. That is a big no. And once we actually teach our younger generation of using and asserting this no and opening them, their minds up to owning everything, then things would actually start flowing, very easily. And, I think that is one point or one tangible step that we need to start taking towards a direction of cleansing our minds of these notions of whatever defines us as who we are. We are human beings. We are inhabiting a certain piece of land, and we must be interested in conserving memories of people who inhabited this land before us. They were equally important. They left this space for us. We will leave this space for the subsequent generation. We would not want them to dismiss us or erase our memories. So likewise, we should not be erasing memories of people who came before us.
Thank you, Dr. Khan, for your very thoughtful response. It demands a lot of reflection, a lot of introspection to understand the depth of what you're saying, because to feel that oneness requires perhaps venturing into areas that we may not be comfortable with. But I really like the thoughtfulness of the response. Dr. Pannu, one of the beautiful things I would say about your book is the way you collected things from historians, writers, actually locals from both sides. It almost like forces integration from the both sides of the border. So, Dr. Pannu, how would you respond to what's the best way of re-owning or re-imaging this shared heritage?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Saab. This is an excellent question. Actually, that was the whole idea behind it. ताकि जड़े non-Sikh researchers है गया, either they are in Pakistan or they are in USA or abroad, they can start accepting the academic value of these marvels in Pakistan. So that's why I had to write the book not just from a perspective of a Sikh reader or a Sikh author. That's why ਉਹਦੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ conditioning ਵੀ ਕਰਨੀ ਪਈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ when I was writing chapter about Guru Arjan Dev Ji Pasha's martyrdom in Lahore, I spent more time in India visiting all Jahangir's places. I was just trying to understand Jahangir. I don't want to limit Jahangir with the episode of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Pasha's martyrdom, which totally changed the Sikh history, of course, but I wanted to understand Jahangir as a whole person. So I spent more time in India than at Lahore, that particular site. So मैं अपनी सारी बुक ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਨੂੰ ਨॉन ਸਿੱਖ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਸ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੱਭਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, either they are in Urdu, Farsi, Portuguese, even some French, so that the international authors, or especially the students in Pakistan, they can start getting more connected to Sikh history as if it's their own, it's Pakistani heritage. they will not do it if we keep presenting as a Sikh historian's point of view, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਵੀ ਹਰੇਕ ਲੜਾਈ 'ਚ ਸਿੱਖ ਵੀ ਕਦੀ ਹਾਰਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਉਧਰ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਵੀ ਉਸੇ ਲੜਾਈ 'ਚ ਹਾਰਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ. So the same ਲੜਾਈ, same battle in the course of history, you will find exactly opposite in Amritsar and Lahore, and it's the same event. So how do you write it from a third party point of view, which is well read in both countries? That what has been my challenge. But as I was using as many contemporary sources or as much possible or semi-contemporary, so that helped me to connect the people. And actually telling you now, I have received a lot more interest from Pakistan history students than from India in the work so far, which is really surprising. Like, I'm really, and that actually achieves my purpose. And even from abroad, like in USA, in England, a lot of people are inquiring about the references I've used, because it was the first time I translated a lot of that, especially old archaic Punjabi, into English. And the whole purpose was to give them citation to that particular page from ancient manuscripts. Many of them were not even published before. ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੋਰ non Sikh researchers ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਾਲ ਯੂਨਾਈਟ ਕਰੀਏ. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਅਕਬਰ ਦੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਸੀ ਸੁਲਹ ਕੁਲ, ਮਤਲਬ ਸਾਰੀ ਕੁਲ ਦੀ ਸੁਲਹ ਕਰਵਾਓ. That did not go anywhere. After 10-15 years, his whole idea of putting the ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਏਰੀਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਾ, Indian subcontinent, it is very interesting. It has all these religions. They're gonna stay together, but they always have some conflicts, but they also can't stay away from each other. Like they have to, ਏਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਚੱਲੀ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਏਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਚੱਲੀ ਜਾਣਾ. Even in Pakistan now, it is an Islamic country now. But do you think, like, all of them, they don't fight with each other? ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਅੱਗੇ branch ਬਣ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈ. Within Muslim religion ਅੱਗੇ branches ਹੋ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈ. ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਖਿੱਤੇ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਹ, which we don't see in the Western world. We are not used to seeing that in America, people dividing like this. So our India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, this region will have this. The goal is ਕਿ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ unite ਕਰੀ ਜਾਈਏ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਦਾਂ ਨਾ ਹੈਰੀਟੇਜ ਬਣ ਲੱਗ ਪਵੇ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ historians think, oh, okay, like Dr. Nadhra Khan has taken the lead. This is the first one that I have seen someone who is really trying to change the perspective about Maharaja Singh. It's very daring, let me tell you this, because I read a lot of things about Maharaja Singh which are written very otherwise, So people like her who are coming forward are giving us a lot of hope. And I just request, with the help of your channel now, is I see still, like, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕੱਲ ਪਰਸੋਂ ਹੀ ਕੋਈ, I saw a very disturbing pattern. Like, people start saying things about Pakistani historians or something if they make one mistake. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਕਿਸੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਚ ਗਿਆ, they were on there, it was a motorcycle group, they were visiting in Pakistan, some Pakistan historians. They took picture with the Pakistani flag there, and lot of people really were pissed off and they were upset at them. ਹੁਣ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਇਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੋਟੋ ਲਾਈ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਫਲੈਗ ਦੀ, ਉਤਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ. They just took a photo. But we should not bash them so strongly, because we failed to put a notice board there for last 70 years telling them ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਏਦਾਂ ਫਲੈਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਾਉਣਾ. ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ 70 ਸਾਲਾਂ 'ਚ ਕੰਮ. ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਗਲਤੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, if we start telling them, next time what will happen? They will not visit that ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ, they will just go. ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਅਨ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਿਚੁਅਲਸ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, we should be little soft, send them inbox, send them something personally, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਹੋਰ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਹੋਣ. If we start telling them, it's not gonna work. Similarly in Sindh, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਨਾਨਕ ਪੰਥੀ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਣੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਆ, they have been living there for centuries and they think the Sikh perspective is without pug because ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਾਲ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੱਖੇ ਹੋਏ. Now when they're exposed on social media to the public and they say I am Sikh, ਉਹ ਦੂਜੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ no, you are not Sikh. So those ਬੱਚੇ are getting confused. So ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਸ ਵਧਾਉਣੀ ਪੈਣੀ ਹੈ with this new social media world, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹੁਣ ਸਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, in the same, we are in a classroom now, like we can have a Turkish student, we can have it. ਅੱਗੇ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ blame ਕਰੀ ਜਾਓ. When we are writing history of Sikh, ਮੁਗਲ ਤੇ ਪਾ ਦੋ, ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਅਫਗਾਨਿਸਤਾਨ ਤੇ ਪਾ ਦੇਣੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਟਰਕਿਸ਼ ਤੇ ਪਾ ਦੇਣੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਗੇ blame as opposer ਜਾਂ aggressor Mongols ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦੇਣਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ Christians. So history keeps on putting the blame on the next country. But now we all are sitting together, even the British people, so we can't even say colonialists ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ Scottish ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ, ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ Irish ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ. So you have to be very balanced, and that's why putting perspective ਕਿ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇਕੱਠਿਆਂ ਦਾ version and written in a neutral, unbiased way is very challenging, but that's what I have been trying to do in my book.
So thanks for your response, because it requires actually a very sensitive way of dealing with things, and in a comprehensive manner, and to the point where you still want to be true. You don't want to be fake, but you don't want to put the blame on somebody. Just a flag di galaya. I live in America and I see U.S. flags in Gurdwara all the time, especially after 9/11. We, a lot of Gurdwaras do that. But when we see another country doing it, we get pissed off. Utte sada jada biasness, zahir ho jandi ne. But I want to give Amardeep Singh his say on this question about re-imaging and re-owning the shared language, please.
Yeah. So, my personal view is that this is a very tough path. We need to be considering ourselves very fortunate that we are trying to play a role. And I'm using the word trying because sometimes in this lonely path that you are in, one is it requires sacrifice. It requires financial challenges. In modern world, you can't survive on these pursuits, right? It requires influencing change. And there are barriers, political barriers, establishments that you have to overcome. मैं काफी बारी कहना तुसी पंजाब दे अंदर काम कर लोगे पाकिस्तान दे अंदर. Try going into Parachinar, try going into Quetta, try going deep into Balochistan, try going into Baltistan. How would you do it? And when you actually start doing it and you actually have documented it, you believe that something is working in your favor. And then your confidence starts going up to say, oh, I can do this. But then the barriers start coming in and they chain you down. They are the reality checks. And so therefore, keeping that in perspective, I just want to say it's a very slow process. Don't be ambitious. Just be realistic. If you can plant the seeds, you would be fortunate if something starts happening. So let's turn around and say, Jadon ye main start kita siga, you asked us to bring about our personal experiences. So I'm going to bring personal experiences from this, right? So I'll say that 2014, when I did the journeys, that came out my first book, the second book, often I get asked this question. In fact, today someone asked me from Burewala. He says, Amardeep Sahab, tohada kaam changa hai, Punjabi legacy te kado kaam karoge? Now, my answer to him was, main kya, yaar beta, he was a young guy. Main kya, beta is tarah kar tu. Apni legacy nu tu own kar. As an individual, I cannot do everything because scope is limited, challenges are there. The day will have to come where every community of Punjab, where it was a mixed cultural living in the past, every community has a history. If they start owning it, if Muslims start owning their documentation in East Punjab, you are already moving towards that. And I think there's a lot happening now in the modern world. When we're talking about 2014, when I started, it was not so open that time. So I said each one, Jains should start documenting their legacy. Hindus start documenting it. Jado 2-4 volumes har community di ban jange na, that day we will celebrate together and we'll say, asi Punjabi legacy document kar li. Divide and literally conquer the task, right? So that's what I want to actually put down as how you can accomplish it. It's a slow process, but I want to just talk about re-imaging. Re-imaging requires a lot of catalysts to be planted to bring about change. And what has been my own experiencing in trying to influence change. First and foremost thing is that when I did these books, I'll tell you my personal experience. It was very tough to build trust. 2014, when I was traveling, Taliban problem was at its peak and I was sitting at Jamrod. I was not able to go inside the Jamrod fort. My first book does not have the inside. The second book has the inside, right? And everyone told me, don't go. And I still went. But the question is, when the book came out, I was literally facing the challenges around from Pakistan's establishment. A lot of them were saying, why have you called it lost heritage? Now, my belief was, unless you're going to be true to the narrative, you will not influence change. You can be soft on everything, but let's call it what it is. It is lost because if I can't influence my Muslim friend to go inside Dera Sahib because he's a believer of Islam, and I, as a person who believes in the faith of that Gurdwara, can't take him inside, it's lost. Let's accept it. And then if we can start talking on those languages, there's no political narrative in the books, but if we can start talking on those narratives, change will hopefully start happening. Now, to me, the biggest, and I'm not the only doer, It's a divine energy doing it with the efforts of many people. But I can tell you, when the first book came out, the cover of the first book, Choa Baba Guru Nanak Gurdwara, it took about 4 to 4.5 years. I've had a lot of discussions with Evacuee Trust Property Board, but I was very happy when last year it was announced that this Gurdwara is going to be maintained. You brought it to the land, to the forefront. You talked about it. You made people uncomfortable to say, let's talk about it. And that's the best way to do it, because you make people uncomfortable, but not make it a political aspect. I just want to talk about one or two small things, just a minute more. My vision was that I've said this earlier, the entire thinking of the community is Gurdwara centric. A lot of documentation needs to be done, but the community only goes to the Gurdwaras and that's it, they leave. How can we create a platform wherein in the Indus Belt, such a large legacy that had churned, remnants of that will be witnessed and will be experienced? So for instance, the second book, when I went inside Jamrod, I looked at that room where Hari Singh Nalwa's body was kept, and there's a plaque on top which is in Urdu, which says that his body was there. And I asked the people inside the fort, it's with the Frontier Constabulary, and I asked the commander there, I said, sir, ye kamre ki value jo hai na, aap nahi jante hain. Ye kamra aapke liye millions of dollars ke worth hai. If you can just put a little bit of bricks and preserve it. And that was a moment I said this, it was in 2017 with that commander. And I'm so happy last year the construction of that room has started. Now, I'm not taking the clay, I'm not saying that I have done it. Many forces have worked towards it. But when you plant these catalysts, these influence changers, things start happening. So the tourism, my vision was, when will we go beyond and start creating a legacy tourism circuit? And I'm very happy we've influenced that. We've got some people in Pakistan who've taken the lead on it, though Corona has hit us, but already good over 250 people last year have gone deep inside Pakistan. And recently there was a BBC clip that was put down. We took the, I'm not a travel operator. I'm a historian, I'm a writer, I moved on to filmmaking, but we influenced the change and we took that deep inside into areas where in 2014, 2017, I was traveling literally with security threat. And this time they're going and seeing the people and the embrace, and they see the connection with the history. It builds confidence on both the sides, and that's where the change starts happening. The last piece is bringing the interfaith aspect together. You know, the biggest project that I think my life's biggest purpose, I think, is now it's surfacing. What we're doing right now is the documentary on Guru Nanak's travels. We've been on a journey for 15 months across 9 countries. We finished the entire filming, but it's a mammoth task. It's a mammoth task to do a 30-episode series across 9 countries. But without Pakistan's content, we couldn't have actually done anything. And in Pakistan, Guru Nanak's travels or Guru Nanak's narrative is not Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib only, where his Gurdwaras have been made in memory. We give respect to that. But his narrative is also in Islamic sites, Sufi sites, Buddhist sites, and where the Jogis used to be there. How do you bring in that narrative and put it together? The day I say this to Pakistan government is that we will release this, you will realize the potential and the narrative across 9 countries. And when you bring the Pakistan focus, I'm looking forward to that day when people will visit Pakistan from my community and say, you know what, Nanak went to this XYZ Sufi shrine or an Islamic shrine, and we want to go there. That's where you open the doors beyond Gurdwaras.
Thank you, Amardeep Singh, for that very comprehensive response and sharing some of your own endeavors. What a wonderful dialogue this has been. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I want to take in questions from the audience. Those of you who are logging on, you can see there's a link in the chat box for all 3 of our panelists' writings. Encourage you, if you have not read their books, their writings, if you have, read it again, because I know the second time I read anything in life, I get perspective I never had the first time around. Highly encourage you to do that. So some of the questions that have popped up, and I'll call on one of the panelists to answer, or some of them, if you feel more comfortable, please go right ahead. First one is for you, Dr. Khan. What are One person's asking, what do the locals perceive these sites to be? What is their perspective?
I mean, it depends, which site are we talking about? Generally, 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, people were, again, it kind of feeds into how political situations have been narrated and how people believe themselves to be upholders of certain tasks that have been assigned to them. This is how they would engage with certain sites. But as things are opening up, as things, have kind of been softening up, people have started to take more pride into reclaiming their Punjabi heritage. In general, as I would go back, Dr. Pritpal, to your own experience. From person to person, people to people, connection is very much there. It's intact. So there has never been an attempt at erasing any particular site or any particular narrative, unless and until there was another motive that was kicking in. So people generally pay respect to these sites. They are mindful of, and again, Gurdwara sites are not open to Pakistani public. So they do not really have an inside knowledge of what goes on in there. It's just whatever is communicated to them. But with this digital age, things are at everyone's fingertips. With Kartar Saab's opening up, things have changed, dramatically. Now, I visited Kartarpur Gurdwara twice, and more than Sikh pilgrimage, it is the Pakistani public that is, roaming around, trying to understand what this building means, trying to reconnect with. Now, again, Guru Nanak Ji's name is something that kind of echoes in everyone's mind at different levels. Some people are more aware of his teachings. Some people, even when people are not really aware of the entire scope of what his teachings are, they somehow feel that Guru Nanak Ji is one of their own. Recently, Faiz Ghar had an exhibition last year, actually in October, and this was actually on Guru Nanak Ji's, the birth celebrations and everything, and I co-curated that exhibition. And so our attempt was to feature Guru Nanak Ji along with other Sufi saints. Because, what Guru Nanak Ji says also resonates with what the Sufi sayings are. So why put him in a different bracket? Why not reach out and start reading him as well? Why not reclaim him as our very own? So these are, baby steps that have kind of, they've been initiated. A lot of people are now working on it. People are open to these notions. There are certain political factors that did take place. Partition was something that, brought about these divisive kind of narratives or the framing of these two different communities and cultures. But gradually people are becoming more and more aware of reading or looking at both sides of the coin and not just sticking to one. And when you do that, you start realizing who was holding the reins in their hands and how are people kind of, acting or reacting to certain situations and issues. So the more you study it, I will just sum it up by saying, the more you study it with an open mind, and you have to pick it up and you have to pick up any piece and work of heritage that you come across without paying attention to what religious, affiliation it has, and study it. Take that step. It may be difficult. You will have to unlearn a lot of lessons that have been kind of, put down your head. But that is also going to be a very rewarding journey, and challenges that are going to bring you to, to treasure troves. I think our journeys, all three of us, the presenters, kind of speak to this. They address this. We started off in a totally different way, probably. We were doing something else. We were driven to this. These are difficult paths. These are solitary paths. But eventually, you do get to a point where you understand the true meaning of what heritage and what your past is, and how beautiful it is to be able to connect to other cultures and communities. I can at least say that for myself. I really feel blessed that I could do that. Now I have friends that could never have been my friends had I been just kind of following the set path that was laid in front of me. If I had not taken a few steps in the other direction, in the opposite direction, I would not be where I am today. So, these rewards that you reap after these solitary paths and after these difficult, sort of paths that you have to carve for yourself, but it's all worth it. That I can say from the depth of my heart. It is worth it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the personal perspective. I know the second time I went to Pakistan, I think I was in college or med school, and I was at the airport. It was Menu Matha Teko Salarji. And I was like, Matha? In the mind, I was thinking, why is this guy saying that? And then he said, Matha Teko ji. And I didn't get it. Third time he said it, Main Rai Bularde Khandan chon. So basically what he was trying to tell me is, Guru Nanak, maybe you may perceive him to be your guru, but sada bhi peer haga. So this is where the shared heritage, it's so much, it's integrated so much, you can't take it apart. I want to try to fit as many questions as I can next 10 minutes. So if you guys can try to say your responses, be focused. So I'll make the next one to Dr. Pannu. Dr. Pannu, somebody's asking, or Amardeep, one of you, what can you share some of the false narratives that were shattered in your visits to Pakistan? Conditioning, one or two incidents, how it changed your thinking.
Sure. The biggest one, which I would say, my first visit to Pakistan was in 2008. That was just a family visit. But right from there, my biggest feeling was that all the gurdwaras, everything has been well, the one that we know of. There was a gurdwara notification list. But the biggest myth that I felt like, that is being shattered throughout my personal journey was a lot of these places are hidden as residences or something. So I started making friends with them. That sometimes is a 4 to 5 year process easily for a particular building to find access into their homes and then to start documenting that. So a lot of buildings are hidden in Pakistan, which are not known still in the public, which I'll be releasing in my future volumes. I'm working very slowly, just releasing what I feel is safe. There are a lot of land mafia. There are a lot of people whom I have promised I will not share, so I'm just watching how the public is reacting. But that is the biggest thing which I found is a lot of stuff is hiding in Pakistan. It's the hidden treasure, which is almost everywhere. And the key to that is you cannot expect that, okay, you will pay someone, just go there for a few days, few weeks. It's just does not work like that. It's a very slow process. You don't want to be someone who has just documented their work and then eventually they start feeling like, hey, these people are coming like, colonialists and, they're exploiting their country just for financial gains. So you have to make them feel good about it, keep talking to them, get involved with their family, with their, like get involved in the people who are caretakers of these places in Pakistan, get involved with them to a level, it's not just about Sikhs, these things I need to preserve. मैं इत्थे कली ना फेरा, इत्थे आर्टवर्क हैगा मेरे घर दे अंदर, मैं इस लेवल तो ऊपर ये सरदार कुछ ये आके देखना चाहते हैं. So that's what I have been personally trying to build, and so far, things have been great. So in my personal opinion, that was the biggest thing which got shattered, is that you can't just pay someone to get it done. You have to make friends with them. You have to first locate these things from Patwariyan diyan fardan chon, old revenue records, kithe gurdware zameen boldi hai. Once you have done that, like in personal, I have done around 270 buildings in Pakistan, out of which only 84 I put in this first volume, because I'm going chronologically. Guru Nanak Dev Ji Sahib to leke, I'm going in a pattern to index entire Sikh heritage in Pakistan by a proper index based on Chicago style of manual formatting as recommended by the American libraries. So ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੌਲੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਦੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, and ਜਿੰਨਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ deep ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, we are finding a lot more stuff that is still available, that is still has to be unearthed, and we appreciate people like Dr. Nadhra Khan who are in Pakistan, who are going to be helpful to us because they are doing it at an academic level.
Thank you for sharing that. There are a few questions regarding partition, so I'm going to skip over those. I'd encourage our audience you can do your research on that. I want to keep the focus on this webinar to the heritage portion. Amardeep Singh ji, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਇੱਕ question ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ. What has been some of your biggest challenges while doing your work?
I think let's look at, without having a positive mindset, you can't succeed in this field, first and foremost, right? Challenges the both asan hain. Challenges the ginan lag jaiye na, since swere to uthi da te raat tak te saah lenda hi challenge hai, right? So mere kehne da matlab, I'm not trying to evade the question. Opportunities are huge, and I think that's what should be driving our thinking, right? I'm going to take a lead from the previous question and bring it into this. I mean, I, for instance, have only experienced, मैं हूँ जड़े सिटी जावा, जड़े बड़ी जगह जावा, मेरी कोई भैन बनी हुई है, कोई भरा बनया हुआ है, right? They don't let me stay in hotels, they don't let me stay in anywhere else. ये तो किस तरह बनया? ये challenge नहीं है ना, ये तो opportunities है क्या? Relationships जड़ियाँ बन जाती हैं, so that relationship actually is the biggest cherishing thing that you take away. But that relationship is not able to help you in navigating through the task that you are in. Now, if you look at my second book, I mean, there's a chapter inside it called Legendary Forts, right? There's a chapter on it called Khalsa Sarkar, which is from a Baltistan perspective. Now, if I start really counting challenges, going into Quetta, Balochistan. Now, when I sometimes look back, I'm not going to spell out the details, but when I look back and I say, man, just what happened in this period? How did I manage to get in there in spite of all the odds? I've never written the story about what Amardeep has done to get there and how he did that. Because that story is for some day, if my life permits. Because I believe strongly that we are on a very noble path. And being on a noble path, the day you make this your story, that day divine will stop helping you. So I'm sorry, challenges are huge, but wo challenges jis din main likhanga na agar likhi, so I'm telling you that'll be a bestseller. Because this is not about just challenges of Pakistan, there's challenges across 9 countries I'm talking about, from Tibet to Makkah, Medina, to Iran, Iraq, to even temples inside India, even to document Guru Nanak's travels. The challenges are umpteen, and that will be a story to tell to the world if I get to it, when I get to it. I don't have any intention to get to it. Let's focus on what is the content. मैं काफी भाई कहना आम खाओ गुठली नु छाड़ो आम दा स्वाद लो, right? So what we are creating as a content, let's delve into the content. If you can just read the content and absorb. Asi the pagal bande hain. We've written off our lives. To be in Afghanistan at a time when last year when we were filming there in the areas where this Nadhra Singh just got caught there, and he was abducted recently. He's just reached India. I mean, we were filming there. We did not face any problem. In fact, Khalida Begum with an AK-47 treated us to a lunch at her home. I see that as an opportunity, and such opportunities are huge.
Thank you for sharing that. One person's asking Dr. Khan for you that they believe Aga Khan Cultural Service Pakistan is highly experienced in undertaking cultural and architectural heritage restoration all over the world. Are they somehow involved with the Sikh heritage restoration in Pakistan?
So Aga Khan, I've been working with the Aga Khan Cultural Service Pakistan since 2016 on their Lahore Fort project. Right now, the focus has been the picture wall and some buildings within the Sheesh Mahal or the Musamman Burj. They would want to take it up, but COVID has changed a lot of things for a lot of people. So I don't know what their future plans are, but they do plan to document the entire fort. And when you're documenting the entire fort, Sikh buildings are very important in that. So I believe that they will be doing that, but I'm not sure as to when that will be happening.
Can I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
So Naraji, thank you for your perspective on that. So, in my first book, there is a a small Sikh monument inside Lahore Fort, which is associated to Rani Jindan, and there's a narrative around it. Some say it's a Nag temple, some say it's a Gurdwara, whatever it is, it comes from the Ranjit Singh's period. One of the things that we tried after the first book and the second book came out and the momentum gathered around the world, a lot of organizations from the Sikh domain came forward. And this is something for you, Nadhra ji, if you can influence it and take it forward. We did say, with some sponsors who are willing to put the money, we did say, let's take a role model. Let's pick up this small plinth area monument, and let's maintain it and restore its architectural value, restore its art. And I personally had a lot of meetings with the Vacui Trust Property Board, with Aga Khan Foundation. I met a lot of leadership. I was in fact in Vancouver, and I went to the center there also, right? And thereafter in Pakistan, we had many meetings. But the unfortunate thing is, meandering through organizations is not an easy path. Sometimes I say, Changa hai Rab ne sanu malang banaya hoya hai. For those who don't understand, I'm glad that God has made us into mavericks, because you carve your own path and you walk without caring, and you document and wait for the results to come out. But I think the challenge is, organizations have their priorities, they have their manifestos, they have their charters, and sometimes the priority that you are bringing in does not fall into their priority. And I think there's a beautiful opportunity. I've told Aga Khan Foundation that for you to work across communities and stand by the values that they really stand for, but somehow it's not come onto their radar as yet. They've talked about it, but they've not taken action.
We are running out of time, and it's been beautiful listening to and coordinating this webinar, facilitating it with everybody. I like to ask everybody to just take a minute, and if there's any final words you'd like to say. And one of the questions was, what is the best way of people to contact you, if you can provide that information too? So we'll start with Dr. Pannu.
Anji, this is all I want to take, is that we all are a team in this. Even if someone is just posting one simple picture of their village from Pakistan has equal value, then any one of us who has even committed much larger period of time of our lives. So everyone counts, jadon vi koi Pakistan to, especially non-Sikh, whenever they post something on social media, please do extra favor, just contact them, encourage them, so that they keep on doing it more. Right now, there are only, I would say, not more than 100 people who are actively doing something for Pakistan Heritage. 100 is very small number as compared to what is available there. Even 100, maybe I'm saying too much. So we need to get more people from different districts, different tehsils in Pakistan interested. And that starts with simple. These days, ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ 4-5 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ social media ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ help ਹੈਗੀ. So minute you see someone posting from Pakistan, reach out to them, say thanks to them, ask them, get friends with them, go beyond that, ask, wish them birthday, like get into that level, wish them Eid Mubarak, just there are so many opportunities. So just doing that, you are making those small cells in Pakistan for the people who can start making these heritage sites as their own heritage sites of Pakistan. That can go a long way. And my contact information I'll type in the comment box. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Pannu. Appreciate you being with us. And Dr. Khan, any last minute comments, closing remarks, and your contact information, if you can put that in. And especially, actually, Dr. Pannu just reminded ki Eid Mubarak ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ, ਤੁਸੀਂ Eid ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ webinar ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ celebrate ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ.
We have. Go back to Amardeep's point he was making about Aga Khan. So Sikh monuments are already on their radar. I know about it because I've been working with them. They don't work in silos in that sense. It's just a matter of time and a matter of funding. Anytime that things come through, they will not, if they're working or documenting the Lahore Fort, I know the team members. So they would not leave a Sikh monument aside, saying that they would not be driven by whatever narrative exists in our textbooks and elsewhere, history books. They would actually, go ahead and document it as eagerly as they're documenting other buildings. So for them, it's a matter of time. For the rest of the people, as you know, you yourself and Dr. Pannu has suggested, we cannot leave things at government levels or with funding agencies or again the bureaucratic setup of getting down and taking care of these things. We have to reach out to people. We have to take care of them ourselves. We have to convince people into owning this heritage as their very own and stop looking at these buildings and artifacts from the religious perspective. Just look at them as important links of your own history, of your own being, of your own present. And, imagine every single person has to imagine himself and herself as a communicator, as a link to the future generations. So it is our duty to safeguard these, to take care of them, and to reach out to people and educate them, convince them, push them a little bit, encourage them, and make them take pride in all of these activities. And I'm sure it's not impossible. It may be difficult. You may have to change your tacks a little bit here and a little bit there, but in the end, it is definitely doable.
Thank you, Dr. Khan, for your enlightening responses. If you can type in the chat the best way people can contact you, that would be helpful. Amardeep Singh, your closing remarks, please.
The closing remarks, I think, would be, I think everyone said what they have to say. I see there's a lot of youth out here hearing. So from where I started, I'd rather leave a message for the youth, because these are parts of being a maverick. These are parts of on an unstructured path and then finding something and then trying to give it a structure so that the world can understand it. World cannot understand unstructured stuff. Right? So you have to go on the path of an unstructured territory and then get essence out of it, put it in a structured manner and give it back to the world. So the question is, this path seems to be very fascinating. I recently spoke at the Royal Geographic Society and I felt good that, as a Sikh, as a Punjabi, as a person from Indian origin in Singapore, I was asked to speak at the Royal Geographical platform. The bottom line was not Sikh legacy in Pakistan. The bottom line was all this stuff that you're doing. What is the takeaway for explorers? Because at the end of the day, we are all explorers. We might be going into heritage and exploring it. Someone might be climbing up Mount Everest. Someone might be going to North Pole, South Pole. Someone might be going deep down inside the sea. We are all inherently explorers. So the question really is, how do you create that explorer's mindset? My one advice to the youth out here who are listening is, apart from your 9-to-9 job, have other purposes around your life. Those purposes could be as simple as gardening, as simple as singing, but do it to the best of your ability. Create your passions, because when you start creating your passions and not follow your passions, following is a blind alley. When you start creating them, you become the passion, and then you see the divine start speaking with you. Even the toughest of paths, the toughest of the barriers open up at the right time. My last 5 years' life is a miracle by itself. How we did the 15 months of travels to get every door opened up across every country, and starting from Pakistan itself, right from Kargil down to Baltistan, how it got opened, it's a story by itself. But I can tell you, it's because the divine sees that you've created your passions. So that's the only message I'll leave for the youth.
Thank you, Amardeep Singh, especially about your second time you mentioned passion. Passion is what drives us. Passion is who we are as individuals. And without passion, life unfortunately ਫੋਕੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ, ਕੋਈ flavor ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਚ. To thank you again, Amardeep Singh, Dalvir Singh Pannu ji, Nadhra Khan ji, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ. ਤੁਸੀਂ you took your valuable time to share with us your personal experiences, your professional writings, the beauty of what you guys are doing. And to our participants, attendees, these guys are doing their work. And when I found it beautiful is what they said in their unique ways was what one can do on an individual individual level. And that's what it's all about. Don't wait for some other organization or something. Do it in a collaborative fashion, do it in an individual fashion, whatever it reminds you. And if you have not been to Pachmi Punjab or Pakistan, go. I cannot wait till the next time, because in a Monday, jere conditioning hoyi hoyi mind di, mostly in a negative manner. Uthe ਉਹ ਭੰਨੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ. So you can only experience this, like how I was treated in my wife's ancestral village. I don't have the words. Oh, feel hi banda kar sakda hai. Or when you go to those historical places, your faith becomes alive. So it's been an honor. It's been a privilege to host you. I hope we can have a reunion in Punjab sometime and we can all meet up. It would be a great field trip for me. And thank you. And I'm going to turn it back again to Manvinder.
Thank you, Dr. Pritpal ji, and thank you everyone today for this conversation. And I think the audience was very, very engaged, as we can see from the lively chat in the Q&A. I'm sure those who tuned in live and those who tune in later will have much to reflect on. And apologies to the questions that were not answered. As always, a recording of this webinar will be available within 24 hours. Again, thank you so much to today's presenters, today's attendees. Thank you for joining in. Today's webinar will be ending now. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you for listening to this webinar. We hope it was insightful into learning about Sikh heritage in Pakistan. If you're interested to learn more, the various works by our panel are linked below. You can look at upcoming webinars on our website at SikhRI.org, and while you're there, please consider becoming a donor. It's with the help from our audiences that the team at SikhRI is able to continue exploring Sikh knowledge and illuminating the voices in the community. Or consider becoming a supporter of the Sikh Cast by clicking on support on our anchor.fm page, or you can use the link in this episode's description. However, this podcast is free to all, so if you do like the show, tell some of your friends and family about us.
You were listening to Sikh Cast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.